I know we think that this is just a small issue or a small problem, but as Bitcoin presents itself as an asset that stands the test of time, meaning it perfectly is still a Bitcoin. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. One Bitcoin mined 5 years ago is worth the exact same that one Bitcoin mined today is. They don't age. Mother Nature doesn't beat up on a Bitcoin. We could have a 1,000-year-old Bitcoin. It's going to spend exactly the same as a 10-minute-old Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoins are Bitcoins. They're digital currencies. They don't weather. They don't age. They don't diminish. They don't get tired. They don't feel the effects of Mother Nature or time. They're pristine. Remember, a Bitcoin is so pristine. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin to the end of time. The system is broken. Inflation is robbing your wealth. Banks control your money. But what if there was a way out? Bitcoin isn't just an asset, it's a revolution, a decentralized, unstoppable financial system built for the people, by the people. This is the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your front row seat to the future of money. No hype, no noise, just real Bitcoin insights from the industry's top voices. Bitcoin isn't the future, it's happening now. And if you're not paying attention, you're already behind. Don't just watch from the sidelines. Be part of the Bitcoin revolution. Subscribe now to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. All right. This is Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. Sorry, I'm a little late, guys. What a day this has been. What a week this has been. Thank you for all of my Parks and Rec people for tuning into the show and checking out Bitcoin for the first time. I know this is kind of a much different community for you. I'm playing with this light, shades and shadows and stuff. By the way, if you haven't started that podcast or that daily show that you always wanted to, I encourage everyone to. Making content is fun. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you knowledgeable about whatever it is you want to make content around. And so, especially if you're in the Bitcoin Noster Parks and Rec community, which are communities that I'm making content in, jump on in. It's a blast. What a great way to spend an hour or so a day just diving in, learning, and getting the best people from a certain niche on your show. It really is a cool little hobby. So I recommend that if there's some Bitcoiners out there sitting on the fence, hop on in, maybe just come on my show, chat with me, or consider starting your own. I've actually helped a couple of people start a podcast on several topics, and we got a good little community of content creators coming out here. So appreciate that. Today for Bitcoin, this is what I want to talk about. Mainly just one subject. I might go off the rails a little on this one, but it has to do with real estate. I was listening to a podcast that Jeff Booth did the other day, and he was talking about how things fall to the marginal cost of production. So marginal cost of production, cost, marginal. These are some keys words here. What does it cost you to produce something? That's X. Y is your margin, what kind of profit you want to make on top of that. But at some point things get kind of Walmartified where, maybe you can make money with a beach chair, but once Walmart gets a hold of it, once the supply chain that's most efficient all the way down the Chinese manufacturing and in containers of it into the Walmart supply chain, into the Amazon supply chain, you can see how things just get razor sharp margins. I think one of the greatest examples that we've seen is televisions, flat screen televisions. Remember when these things came out, they were 10 grand a piece, but as supply chains matured, as the, what do they call it? Economies of scale kicked in, once manufacturing techniques got streamlined, and once we had mass production and Walmart was mass distributing, mass selling, that kind of stuff. Now what, a 50 inch used to be 10 grand. Now you see a 50 inch at Walmart for like $300, $200. And now you see 85 inch TVs for like $600 and $700 at Walmart. So, this was what should be happening. So you might be asking yourself, Why isn't everything going down in price? If we are getting better as a society at shipping, logistics, ordering, running businesses with all the efficiencies of communication and software, making all businesses more efficient, why aren't things going down in price? You really think the piece of lumber or even the bag of rocks is not more efficiently mined, shipped to the Home Depot than it was 50 years ago? I mean, let's take something that you really can't improve upon, a bag of rocks at Home Depot. Okay, there's no technology increase on the rock itself. So what are the improvements? It's shipping logistics, the shipping companies, the logistics companies, the advancements in heavy equipment that is in mining, all that has gotten more efficient. Many of this has shifted even to robotics. Even on the delivery, or a lot of these machines in the mines are now robotically driven. And so it would seem that everything should be getting cheaper. So why are prices continuing to go up? And why does something like a home continue to go up in price? Because the home does not go up in value. Your home should be going down in price because it is rotting to the ground. And when you consider the cost of you and a painter and a roofer and a repair guy chasing this piece of real estate throughout its lifetime of break and fix and weeds and cutting grass and pruning trees and never ending leaks and paints and termites and everything else, this piece of real estate should be going down in value, if not for the efforts of the owners maintaining the property. And you can't say the house is becoming rare because they're printing houses. The entire residential construction industry is constantly making more houses. And if you don't think a house should go down in value, then let Mother Nature have it for a decade and we'll see what's it worth. Once the weeds and the termites and bugs start chewing this away, my point is real estate doesn't seem that hard of an asset, that it needs constant human intervention to protect it from at least Mother Nature, definitely tenants, certainly taxing authorities that are constantly diminishing its price by 10% a year, 3% a year, whatever, property taxes. Um, and so we like to think as real estate as, oh, they're not making any more land kind of stuff. And it's a sound investment. Um, but the only reason that the illusion of a home going up in value is because the home is just not sinking in in terms of dollars. So the dollar is losing half of its purchasing power, let's just say on a time frame, and on that same time frame, the house is only losing like a quarter of its purchasing or of its price, the price it demands at the market value. And so when you're just sinking a little bit slower than the dollar, the illusion is that the house is going up in value or even in price. But I would think the only reason a house goes up in value is because it just maybe magically had a fourth room, or it just grew, like a tree grows or something, but it doesn't. A three-bedroom house with two bathrooms in 20 years, unless you add onto it, is still a three-bedroom house, um, you know, with two bathrooms. And if it's an older home and you don't update it, that's held against you at the point of sale. Okay, so think about it. If you hold a house for 20 years and you update nothing, you have the same old, I'm not even talking about appliances, but the same old floors, the same old cabinets. I mean, people expect you that after 20 years, you've got to redo the kitchen, you've got to redo the bathroom, you've got to, you know, make some improvements on it just to keep it up at normal value and in competition with the new home market. And so I know we think that this is just a small issue or a small problem, but as Bitcoin presents itself as an asset that stands the test of time, meaning it perfectly is still a Bitcoin is a Bitcoin. One Bitcoin mined 5 years ago is worth the exact same that one Bitcoin mined today is. They don't age. Mother Nature doesn't beat up on a Bitcoin. We could have a 1,000-year-old Bitcoin. It's going to spend exactly the same as a 10-minute-old Bitcoin. Okay. Bitcoins are Bitcoins. They're digital currencies. They don't weather. They don't age. They don't diminish. They don't get tired. They don't feel the effects of Mother Nature or time. They're pristine. Remember, a Bitcoin is so pristine. A Bitcoin is a Bitcoin to the end of time, far into the future. Now, what other asset? Think of a hard asset, a physical asset. Many of these things diminish over time. Now, I'm not talking about like well, I mean, maybe like a rare painting, but there again, another example of how because it's just losing value um, slower than the purchasing power of the dollar. Because remember, if everything is priced in dollars and they're constantly printing dollars, then this is called the debasement of the currency. And these other assets, they're falling also because of various reasons. As an example, Mother Nature is diminishing the value of all real estate pretty much year round, simultaneously across the planet. Wind and rain pretty much happens everywhere. Storms happen everywhere. Fires happen everywhere. Earthquakes happen everywhere. You know, what happens to your great pristine piece of commercial steel structure when an earthquake hits it, or when a fire hits it, or when looters start to, burn the city down or something? So Bitcoin doesn't have this problem. It's real estate in cyberspace that's pristine always, and you can bring it with you from one war-torn nation and bring it to maybe a more peaceful nation, and it doesn't feel like it's war-torn. There's no such thing as a war-torn Bitcoin. It's a Bitcoin when it shows up in your new nation. You can even spend it in your warring nation. Um, and I think that's one of the powers of Bitcoin that we're not recognizing. And why is this important? Because this is not a tiny asset class. The real estate market is 250 trillion with a T, trillion. The real estate market is a $250 trillion market. And so a lot of this is captured by investment capital looking for a safe haven against inflation. And so what happens when um, this investment class starts to diversify into a pristine asset class that can be sold globally 24/7, and you don't have to go through some fancy selling process where you can take 6 months and sometimes consume 10% of its value, 5% of its value. And so think of all the closing costs. And then that's assuming that this isn't a place where people just don't want to be. If it's like a war torn nation, you're not selling any real estate in Ukraine probably right now. And maybe there's some other places like that. So your whole real estate portfolio can get destroyed, but not if it's Bitcoin. That's a piece of property you can just take with you in your head. 12 words. That's the thing that you can just send across the ocean to anyone you want, and any fraction of it, well, almost any fraction of it. One Satoshi is 100 millionth of a Bitcoin, and there's 100 million Satoshis in every single Bitcoin. You can send one sat to somebody. So I just think this is something not often talked about. I hear a lot of people, a few people now that I'm in Bitcoin, talk about the real estate wave that is, I don't think has even gotten close to starting. 1% of the real estate market is bigger than all of Bitcoin. 1%. It's $250 trillion. 1% of 250 is 2.5 trillion. That's bigger than the market cap of Bitcoin. So something 100 times bigger than Bitcoin is a natural fit for people looking to preserve their purchasing power through space and time against inflation. It's a perfect fit for those that this is exact. Now, maybe not every real estate owner has the mindset of I'm just buying real estate to preserve my capital against the debasement of a currency. But how much is that? Is that 20%, 30%, 10%? I mean, if it's just 1%, or if it's just 10% and 1% and a tenth of that decides to diversify into Bitcoin to have some exposure into a similar function of preserving capital's purchasing power into the future, we're talking, a doubling of Bitcoin or 10xing of Bitcoin, just if a fraction of this community um, moves over or diversifies for the same purpose of preserving capital and its purchasing power into the future. And so when we think, are we early? Oh my gosh. Real estate has not even flinched in the direction of Bitcoin with the use case of preserving purchasing power of current wealth into the future without debasement and without the ravages of Mother Nature. There are no ravages of Mother Nature on Bitcoin. It's digital currency. And so I think this is a big thing that's going to be happening. Maybe not even in this cycle, because this is more of an educational piece. People are moving into Bitcoin mostly because a number go up. That's always the biggest recruiter. The biggest recruiter for Bitcoin is number go up. Okay. People coming here just to make more money. But, it's not all about number go up on investors' mindsets. A lot of it is, hey, number go up's nice, but it's a second. Really just don't lose purchasing power. How about we start there? How about let's get something that's not easily taken, stolen, taxed? Maybe I'm looking for a little more functionality than number go up. Maybe I've already got the number go up because I inherited X $100 million, and I'm not here for number go up. I'm here for, how about not number go down or number go to zero? Okay. Is there something you can put me in that will withstand 1,000 years or 100 years, and I can sleep and I don't have to worry about, renters burning me down or taxing authorities taxing me out into oblivion, or, you know, so many other attack vectors that a piece of real estate has versus Bitcoin. So I think this is going to be a quite a large community coming in, and I don't think they're going to wake up until they wake up. And what's going to wake them up is not number go up. I think what's going to wake them up is just a slight comparison to all the other attack vectors just not being there. Because if you're in real estate, you're constantly dealing with property managers, turnovers, expanding this real estate portfolio, selling out of units that you're no longer interested in, maybe because the neighborhood went down, whether maybe you're a slumlord, maybe you don't want to be a slumlord, but your A-class apartments are now becoming C's, and you're like, I better get out of that. I'd rather do new construction. So between that and weathers and fires and everything else, it takes a lot of effort to make money in real estate. This is a profession. Um, holding Bitcoin is not a profession. It's just a buy and hold and do nothing strategy. Now, I'm not encouraging that. I'm encouraging people to get in Bitcoin and work like I'm doing and like others are doing. Build the world you want. Don't just be a buy and hold. But I'm not talking to the current Bitcoiners. I'm talking to the real estate investors that are going to start diversifying just 1%. And let me tell you, when you have um, a portfolio of investments. Some are stocks, some is real estate, some is Bitcoin. You're looking at these across the board. Now, it doesn't matter that 80% is in real estate, 19% in stocks, and 1% in Bitcoin. You're going to look at the ROI, the performance. You're going to look at the cost. You're going to look at the man hours that it took to manage all three of these asset classes you have. And Bitcoin numbers are going to come back pretty good because there's not much management. There's probably not much theft. There's probably not much lawsuits and landlords and property management problems. And maybe there's not as much exposure to all the political problems of one nation, because Bitcoin kind of is the whole. It's stabilized by the entire planet. So if you are a Bitcoin holder, let's say in Vietnam, and then Vietnam just like bursts into a war, um, or something like that. Let's say it's a stable economy, and next thing you know, everything's falling apart around systems, the currency, the real estate market. But if you hold Bitcoin, well, now you're as stable as the global economy. So all the other non-warring economies are going to hold your Bitcoin stable while the real estate market in your war-torn nation just plummets. So I think that is a decentralized benefit that only Bitcoin has. Real estate's not decentralized at all. It's pretty dang centralized. Wherever you buy it, you're stuck in that one location, and you can only sell this to somebody that wants also that location. And you got to do business in that location if you are trying to rent or compete in the commercial rental market. And so I think that as people start to understand the exposure that they have, that their capital has, when in real estate, start to educate themselves and start to wake up, and Bitcoin becomes more of a well-known asset class, and you see the use cases of it being a strategic reserve and a treasury reserve and a digital gold. And then all of a sudden you start hearing terminology like I'm spitting out, which is an alternative to wealth preservation, similar to an alternative to land, an alternative to any type of real estate portfolio. And then how many realtors does it take? How many real estate investors does it take to reach out to their network and say, hey, man, you should really look into Bitcoin? I sold a couple of my homes and I bought Bitcoin, and now look at what the rest of my portfolio did, and they show them the spreadsheet, and then look at what Bitcoin did, and you have to stare at those two performances. I think that 250 trillion is going to wake up. I think it is. And I think when it does, it's going to be huge, it's going to be meaningful, and it doesn't have to be much of a move. A 1% move is twice as big. I mean, excuse me, is bigger than the market cap. And since price is set at the margin, you're not just going to double the amount of money in Bitcoin and it only go up in price. It only double in price. So if somebody came with $2 trillion and said, give me all the Bitcoin this will buy, it's not going to go to from 100,000 or 80,000 a Bitcoin, wherever it is. Haven't checked. I don't even know where it's at. Patience, Daniel-san, Bitcoin. Here we go. Well, 82,610. So it's just not going to go up to 160,000. It's going to hit the moon. You know, when it's worth 4.5 trillion, if somebody were to bring in 1% of the real estate portfolio into this, I don't know the math behind that. I'm sure some of my Bitcoiners can kind of run that theory, what it would run up to, but it wouldn't shock me if it would slaughter 500,000, maybe even higher, because you're going to have a lot of people. It's not like everybody sells their Bitcoin. They don't. So it's only the sellers that want to sell at that price. And yeah, you know, when somebody shows up with $2 trillion to buy Bitcoin as an industry shifting or diversifying into this newer industry, yeah, maybe there's, I don't know, 100 million or 200 million or 200 billion that'll sell, you know, around 100,000. But I think as you start demanding more and more Bitcoin at the market's going to respond by saying, all right, selling for 300,000 or 500,000 or a million. And so you might not be able to fill that order of 2.5 trillion till it gets to a million a coin if nobody's selling. And then if nobody's selling, it doesn't matter how much, nobody's left to sell. And the question is, could a $2.5 trillion order even be filled? Like, could it even be filled? Now, I know this doesn't happen quickly, but this isn't a big move. It's 1% of the real estate market that starts to wake up to this. So anyway, this came to me while Jeff Booth was telling everyone that in Bitcoin terms, houses are going down in price. That his home, I think, took 66 Bitcoin 5 years ago, and today it takes 6 Bitcoin or 22 Bitcoin or something like that. Yeah, it was 22 Bitcoin. And so even though your house demands more dollars, it does not demand more Bitcoin. And soon, you watch, very, very soon, most of our homes will be able to be bought in under 1 Bitcoin. You'll be able to buy a house with 1 Bitcoin. And soon after that, you'll be able to buy a house with 0.1 Bitcoin. Okay, so yes, houses are plummeting in price compared to Bitcoin. Just wanted to throw that out there. Tomorrow, I am doing a show from my from Proof of Drink. Mark, hope you feel better. He's sick right now. He's the guy that runs it, but I kind of help him when I can, co-host it, and we got a lot of other good members there. Daniel and Morgan and a couple other people that show up. Hopefully, we're going to run this podcast from that, so you'll be able to hear from Daniel, hear from Morgan, hear from me, and anyone else that show up. I actually invited Kevin. If you're listening, you should come to this. Who else is out there? Blockchain Wayne should come as well. Tim, if you're listening from New Orleans, you're welcome to come over, join this podcast tomorrow. We'll do this podcast from the monthly Baton Rouge Bitcoin meetup, which is called Proof of Drink. We got a new logo that Mark is showing off, and hopefully he's going to get some swag. If you have not been to a local Bitcoin meetup, you really need to go. It's important that you meet your community, that you meet your fellow Bitcoiners that can really talk you through some of these, coach you through some of these more complex operational securities. They can also connect you with miners if you want to do some home mining, just to learn if you want to run a node, if you want to really get plugged in. It's important to have a local team that can just you can just be around, socialize. You can kind of calm your nerves during these massive ups and downs, which I don't know how long this is going to last. It could be another decade that Bitcoin is still massive price swings, but it's important to have a community around you. They're typically a really good people, good in finance, understand the macro, and many have had interesting journeys on how they got into Bitcoin, especially those of us that have gotten in pretty deep into it. And I recommend that you surround yourself by these people because they're usually super well read. A lot of those books behind me are Bitcoin books or recommendations, business books or economic books. And so you are who you surround yourself by, right? You want to be surrounded by somebody that has done a deep dive into macroeconomics, how money is made, how money is stolen, how computers and the age of cryptography is giving you a new asset class to protect you from a lot of this digital theft. This is the crowd where you meet them. And then on top of that, you should be going to some BitDev meetings. Shout out to Rod over in Nashville, who hosts a BitDev meeting once a month in Nashville. I went to that one last month. I'm hoping to make the one this month. But if not, I will be back there later this year. And then if you're not going to, BitBlock Boom or the Vegas Bitcoin convention, you really should. And this is more the in-person, meet your community, and so that you can surround yourself by really good people that are going to help you along your way. And I have personally used this a lot. A lot of my fellow Bitcoiners in my Bitcoin meetup have helped me with getting wallets before I knew what any of that was. And then I have helped many people get their first hardware wallet, transfer Bitcoin onto it, make sure it was okay, send them some Bitcoin back and forth just to make sure everything works, help them with their operational security. It's important for the community to kind of be there for each other like this. And you kind of you don't want to do some of this stuff with somebody online. It's important to have a local person where, you know where they are, you know who they are. You can hang out with them for a few times just to check them out versus some stranger online that you never know who they are. And it could just be waiting to get your 12-word seed phrase and run off with your whole stack. So got to be careful. So I'd rather do that kind of stuff in person. I know people kind of some frown upon that, but I'd rather, look a guy in the eyes before I do any kind of business with him anyway. So that's more of a practice that we should all be having. All right. So I'm going to do this again, podcast tomorrow from the Bitcoin meetup at the Bulldog starting at 6 p.m. We'll probably start this show maybe around 7-ish, 7 to 8, we'll try to do 8 to 9. But our Bitcoin meetup usually runs from 6 to 9 o'clock, something like that, 3 hours. So hopefully we'll have a little bit longer show, have a few more guests, and have some other cool topics from the other guys. So this is Craig LeBlanc signing off. I'm the doorman, your host of the Daily Bitcoin Podcast. And hold up, this time I'm going to close out with the proper media. Just give me 1 second to do my outro that Chris made us. And I will see y'all here again tomorrow. Love you guys.
Welcome to the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, where knowledge meets financial freedom. We're here to break down the world of Bitcoin. No fluff, no hype, just real talk about how this digital asset is reshaping the future of money. Inflation is stealing your purchasing power, but what if there was a way to fight back? Enter Bitcoin, the digital currency that empowers you to take control of your wealth. Ever wondered why your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to? At the Daily Bitcoin Podcast, we educate, inform, and inspire. From expert interviews to breaking news, we bring you everything you need to stay ahead in the Bitcoin community. Market updates, expert insights, real-world use cases, and practical tips to navigate the Bitcoin economy. So whether you're a seasoned Bitcoin investor or just getting started, this is your daily dose of Bitcoin wisdom. Don't miss out. Subscribe now, hit that bell icon, and let's break free from the chains of inflation, one Bitcoin at a time. The Daily Bitcoin Podcast, your gateway to financial freedom.